So obviously you've got a big fight here, but you're coming off of just a really amazing accomplishment, becoming the light heavyweight champion last year, the fastest fighter in UFC history from the time you debuted with the promotion to become a two-division champion. What does that accomplishment say about you?
Não, me sinto muito bem, né? Feliz, por tudo.
No, he feels very good with everything that's happening. There's two championships under his belt already. Money from the company is being good. He cannot complain on his pay. So, he have nothing to complain. He's just smiling.
Of course, of course. Have you closed the door entirely on going down for that middleweight belt again, or are you just focused on 205?
Não, fechei a porta mesmo.
No, bro, there's a closed chapter on his life. You know what I mean? He used to suffer a lot to make the weight class. He just mentioned, and I witnessed it. He turned to me and Glover after his last weight cut. Before the fight, he said, win, lose, or draw. This is my last weight cut from this weight class. He's done.
Okay, okay. Now, obviously, and you're headlining here, UFC 300, one of the biggest events in UFC history. Of all of the talented fighters, both on this event and on the roster in general, it's you. You're chosen to be the guy at the end. What does that mean to you for the UFC to put you in that position?
Não, significa muito, né?
No, man, it means a lot for him because, uh, when he first got to the UFC, many people are like doubting him, say, oh, this guy's a kickboxer. He's not going to get nowhere in the organization. He's not going to go nowhere. You know what I mean? We don't believe the hype. Even many pseudo experts that will say like this guy, you know what I mean? He's not fit for this game. You know what I mean? He's not going to go nowhere like he said. Then I mean, it's good that he's kind of like proving them wrong. And not only proving people wrong, right? Those experts, but also for his self-achievements, right? When people doubt you, people go and say that you're not going to get nowhere. Alex is the living proof that you can get anywhere, coming from where he came from nothing, and conquer everything that he did. He's a good example for everybody that nobody can tell you that you cannot go nowhere.
Yeah, obviously, you have a very interesting backstory, and you talked about this to some degree, but I find it fascinating. UFC 200, let's go back just about to that. At UFC 200, you were already established in kickboxing, but July 2009, that was UFC 100. I understand that's the year you started training kickboxing. Had you even started training in martial arts by the time of UFC 100?
2009 eu comecei
Exactly why you're saying, because 2009 he actually not even had started really training yet. He not even had trained soccer or anything like that. He just laid on 2009 that he started putting his foot to get wet on martial arts.
Já
não, funny, because I just assim, tem lutador, quem tá conversando, tem lutador no UFC 300 que lutou no 100, no 200, now gonna fight on 300. Say, yeah. And many fighters that fought on those three since then and still fighting didn't conquer what Alex did.
It is just remarkable. I mean, you have a very interesting story. You've accomplished a lot in your life. You've overcome a lot in your life. You've spoken before about how martial arts was kind of your way to the pathway to beating addiction to alcohol. And it didn't necessarily, it wasn't a quick journey to do that. And, you didn't set out to become a champion, but nonetheless, here you are, you're a two-division champion in two different sports. How often do you take the time to kind of look back and reflect on where you started compared to where you are now?
Com certeza, isso aí não tem como esquecer, acho que...
No, absolutely, man. I think almost every day he thinks about how far he came. And that is just, you know what I mean, to keep him grounded on his roots. For an example, yesterday, he was a Glover. They were watching some fights, also his fights. And clearly yesterday, he was also, he was actually thinking about everything that he'd been through and how hard it was to get here and everything that took him to get here. And that is important for you to always remember where you come from, because so you get grounded, so you don't get, you know what I mean, fading away on smokes and mirrors, so you don't get into an illusion of the fame and everything, you know what I mean? So that's why Alex is always going to Brazil. He's always hanging out with his friends, old friends, with his old family, you know what I mean? He's always staying grounded with his roots, in contact with his roots, because that's keep him on his core or who he is.
How long has it been since you had a drink of alcohol, Alex?
Mas quanto tempo faz já que você acha que você bebeu pela última vez?
A última vez, 2013, se eu não me engano.
2013.
2013, 2012, 2013, mais ou menos. Não tem assim uma data, mas.
11, 12 anos já, pô. Almost 12 years ago, if you put together.
Wonderful. Congratulations on that. Going back to UFC 300 and against Jamal Hill, this is a big fight. This is your sixth fight in a row, actually, against someone who was either a champion, been the champion, or would eventually become the champion. Are you enjoying kind of testing yourself against this elite caliber of opponent so quickly into your career?
Sinceramente, eu nem penso nisso.
Real talk, bro. He not even think about none of that. If he's champion, ex-champion, future champion, former champion, he just go and fights because that's how it's supposed to be. Many people go and say, "Oh, you were there to avenge Glover. Is that bad blood and stuff?" No, he's just fighting another opponent.
So you can put all that aside. Because we've seen, it's obviously an easy story. We look at that and we know it's your coach and the guy who beat him, put him into retirement. And we saw it that night. You kind of had that glare at him, right? We all saw the look that you were giving him. I don't know if there was anything meant at that time, but you're saying that none of that has to do with this. You're able to put that aside?
Com certeza, ainda bem que
Absolutely, man. And it's very good that he's able to do that because he can stay cold-minded and calm to be able to put on his strategy. And for each opponent, a different strategy. And he's already got his strategy for Jamahal Hill.
Now, nobody has defended this championship, this light heavyweight championship, in 3 years. It's been a while since someone was able to win the belt and then defend his perch, right? You could be the first here this next weekend. Do you have any goals of how many title defenses you would like to have at this weight class, or are you just kind of letting it ride?
Cara, eu sempre
He just going things about winning, man. Whether it's defending or not defending, he just goes over there with the mindset to win. Yesterday, like I said, they were hanging out and his kids were there, and his kids were actually mentioning how Anderson Silva and John Jones were able to defend so many times. I think one was 8 or 13. And like Alex says, basically impossible for today's days level of sport for someone to defend 13 times a title, like to do that many defenses because the level is just so high. These dudes are coming very well prepared. So it's a very thin margin of, you know what I mean, who's best, who's worst. So he's not saying that it's impossible, but he's kind of he's not being, you know what I mean, pessimist. And I mean like not optimist, but he's just being realistic that on today's days level of sports scenario is really hard to do all those defense.
Yes, no, I understand. And obviously striking is your biggest weapon. That is no secret with your kickboxing background. You consider yourself a mixed martial artist as well. But Jamal Hill, he likes to stand and fight as well. It kind of ties into your strength in that sense. He throws a lot of volume. He's got some knockouts in the UFC. How do you rate him as a striker?
eu acho assim, o mais perigoso dele é a
Realistically speaking, I think the strongest point of his stand-up fighting is his power, especially when we are speaking of 4 ounce gloves. You know what I mean? Realistically, if you grab a big dude, bro, a very strong guy, and put small gloves, he you know what I mean? He might swing even on a fighter, end up knocking a fighter out. When you put power in those little gloves combined, the big damages can be done. But when we talk about now putting the power aside, because we think that Jamal Hill's strongest part, it is the power that he have on his hands. But put that aside, level or stand up, Jamal is a little far from Alex level.
Do you have a prediction for the fight?
Tem alguma previsão para luta?
previsão, minha vitória. Não sei como.
Win, no matter, don't know how.